Hey there, tech fans. Rick here from the OREI team with an overview of the WUHD-660-K wireless HDMI sender and receiver kit. We designed this product to make it very simple for you to extend any 4K ultra high definition video source wirelessly up to 660 feet away to a remote location in your home or your office. We also include IR blaster functionality, which enables you to use a remote at that secondary location to control your media source at the primary location. Now, as part of this overview, I'd like to start with an unboxing of the product just to show you everything that comes with the kit. Then I'll do some close-ups of all the major components and explain the connectors and indicators. I'll give you some understanding of what video and audio standards we support, as well as what typical devices most of our customers use with the product. And then I'll come back and actually do an installation of the product to show you just how simple it'll be to use this gear once you get it home with your own equipment. So let's get started with the overview. Now, I've taken the liberty of pulling everything out of the box, but when you do the same, you'll find a transmitter module, a receiver module, a power supply for each, and an IR blaster for each. So these are pretty much a component set here and a component set there. We also include a full instruction manual that goes into great detail with diagrams and explanations of the connections you'll need to make to get this working in your home with your own equipment, but I'm going to show you how to do that in a few minutes. There's also warranty information in the instruction manual, as well as contact information in case you've got any questions and need to get a hold of us. So stay tuned, and I'll do some hands-on, close-up views of both of the major modules, power supplies, and some of the other gear that's included with the kit. The WUHD-660-K product is comprised of 6 major components, including the transmitter, a set of antennas, a power supply, an IR blaster module, the receiver, a second set of antennas, a second power supply, and a second IR blaster module. The antennas attached to both the receiver and the transmitter in the same fashion. They're basically finger tightened on the threaded stud in the back and then flipped up for best reception. And you can use either antenna on either stud. There's no personality to them. And you can mix and match between the receiver and the transmitter as well. The power supplies are also interchangeable. They're a standard 5-volt, 3-amp power supply, so they're heavy duty. This end gets plugged into the wall. This end has a barrel connector on it with a locking collar that basically is plugged into the back here and then finger tightened so it doesn't come out. And again, you can use either power supply with the receiver or the transmitter. The IR modules have a personality. You'll see one labeled IR in and one labeled IR out. The IR out module goes with the transmitter. The IR in module goes with the receiver. And that's important because this will receive the infrared signals from your remote and transmit those along with the video and audio over that wireless connection to the transmitter, which will then rebroadcast them to the device you're controlling. Now, as far as the two modules go, they look very similar, but they are labeled transmitter and receiver, and it's important that the transmitter is located down in your main media center. So you've got whatever components you want to broadcast through this system connected to the transmitter, and the receiver connects to the monitor in your remote location. So let's take a look at the transmitter first. Again, it's a metal cabinet which cuts down on interference and RF radiation. You've got a series of LEDs on the front, a power indicator, a sync indicator, and an indicator here that lets you know you've got a good HDMI connection. Plenty of venting on the bottom to keep the components cool and on both sides as well. On the back of the unit, we've got several connections. These are the 2 antenna connections where you screw the antennas into. That's your power supply connection. This is a reset button. You'll find one on the receiver as well. These are paired from the factory, but if you have a problem with connection, you can hit the reset button on both and they'll sync up. This is where you plug in the IR blaster module. And then the input from your device goes here. So you use a short HDMI cable to plug this into your HDMI device, whether that's a DVD player or a game console, and then you're all set there. The receiver module has a similar series of connections on the back. Again, 2 antenna connections, that's your power supply connection, IR blaster module, and a short HDMI cable from here to your monitor. Here's the reset button. Plenty of venting on the bottom again, and an all-metal case to cut down on any kind of RF interference. And that's pretty much all the connections you'll need to make to the system to get it up and running. Now, if you stay tuned, I'll actually test this here in the shop and show you just how easy it is to get it working. This system supports a broad spectrum of video resolutions through its point-to-point wireless connection. These include 4K at 24 Hz, 25 Hz, and 60 Hz, as well as 1080p at both 50 and 60 Hz. This is done through its ProLink technology to give you the best possible picture, and it's also HDMI and HDCP compliant. The WUHD-660-K supports a wide range of HDMI sources, including streaming devices such as Roku and Apple TV, home surveillance systems, game consoles, PCs, and cable boxes. Now I'll show you how, with a few simple connections, you can have the WUHD-660-K working with your own equipment at home. For this demonstration, I've set up a media player on this side of the table to simulate the content you want to broadcast to that secondary location. This is typically a DVD player, cable box, or game console. It's any valid HDMI source. On this side of the table, I have the monitor at that secondary location. In front of me, I have the transmitter unit and the receiver unit. There are two power supplies that I've already plugged in. Let's start with the transmitter unit. There are two connections on the back that you need to make. I've run a short HDMI cable from my media source. That gets plugged into the HDMI input port in the back of the module. And I've also plugged in the power supply I mentioned a second ago. That gets connected to this barrel plug in the back. Then you finger tighten the power supply. On the receiver end, you've got similar connections. I've run a short cable off of the back of the monitor. That gets plugged into the HDMI output port. And I've got a second power supply plugged in. Goes into the barrel connector, and again, finger tight. Now, the minute I add power to these units, you'll see on the front we've got LEDs blinking. What's happening there is, on the transmitter side, it's going through a power on self-test, making sure all the components are working internally. It's checking to see if it's got a valid HDMI input source, and it's also checking that source to see what resolution it's broadcasting at so it can make adjustments if needed with the receiver. The receiver is going through similar power on self-test. Once it completes that, it's checking the monitor to see what resolutions that monitor can display. Then the two of them initially are going to talk to each other and communicate what the best possible resolution would be for that transmitted signal to be broadcast across and then picked up by the receiver on the second side. Now, if you power these up for the first time, they should be paired from the factory. If it turns out that they sit for a few minutes and they don't actually pair up, you can hit the reset button on the back and that'll restart that process for you. It does take a minute or two for them to go through that power and self-test to find each other and start that broadcast, but I still think it's amazing that you can broadcast an HD 4K, ultra high definition, 60 frames a second signal to a secondary monitor up to 200 meters apart through the air using these two transmitters and receivers. And actually, there's the picture now. So what I'm broadcasting is content from this guy all the way through a wireless connection to a secondary monitor up to 200 meters apart. And that's incredible to me. Now, we take it a step further. We actually include infrared blasters that plug into the back of the unit. So you've got one for the receiver, plugs in the back. You've got one for the transmitter that plugs into the back of that. When you connect those at that secondary location, if you have a remote control that you want to control that content at the primary location, that receiver will pick up that signal, add that to the broadcast back to the transmitter unit, and then rebroadcast it out this end to control whatever that media device is. So it makes it very easy at that secondary location to pause or start or fast forward that content wherever that happens to be at that great distance apart. It really is just that simple to hook it up, and you have a beautiful picture at that secondary location. We hope you found this overview of the WUHD-660-K wireless HDMI sender and receiver kit helpful. The product provides a very simple way of extending any 4K ultra high definition video signal 660 feet wirelessly with a few simple connections to your gear at home. If you have any questions on anything I've covered today, or if you've missed anything, please check the FAQ on our website or use the Contact Us link to send us a note, and we'll get back to you as quickly as we can. Until next time, thanks for watching.